Hi there, this is Phil Hall, Senior Enterprise Editor with Westfair Communications. On today's video interview, we're going to be talking about working from home, particularly the technology aspects of the home office. And I have three guests here who are experts on the subject. Here in the top row with me is Gilda Bonanno. She is a professional speaker, consultant, and facilitator who serves as a trusted advisor to executives and entrepreneurs. Underneath me, we have Bridget Flynn. She is the owner of Intuitive Interiors. And sharing the row with Bridget is James Kudla. He is the president of TarryTech. And if you're watching this video, you can obviously tell that none of us are in a corporate office. If this is what a corporate office looks like, I'm going to need to get Bridget's help to get some better design in here. But you know, nowadays, it doesn't seem that it matters where anybody is. You could have plants, you could have funky posters, you could have, James warned me that it might be a cat walking through the video while we're doing it.
Actually, already walked past, I saw it.
Oh, that's great. And I'm curious, what is it now that how did this become the new normal, that all of a sudden corporate America just became working out of the downstairs or working out of the spare room? James, let's start with you.
Well, I guess it wasn't necessarily planned to go this way, right? But there's obviously this pandemic that's going on, and everyone was forced to work remotely. So almost overnight, people were thrust into an environment where they kind of had to make things work. Business had to continue on. People had to communicate. You had to respond to your clients. You had to get proposals out the door. And, you know, I guess there's varying degrees of preparedness that we're seeing out there in regards, certainly from a technology standpoint. So certainly some people, I think, were able to transition and move into it quite easily, you know, depending on what they had already incorporated in their offices and what had already been part of their culture. And some people, I think it took a little bit of time and effort to stand them up. And I think they're still finding themselves scrambling a little bit to be efficient and communicate well. So it's been, you know, a little bit of a varying degree of how well people have moved into this new norm.
Well, Bridget, you're the design expert. Is it possible to have a home office that is just too much home and not enough office, especially if you're doing a Zoom presentation like we're doing?
Yes, absolutely. I see it very frequently because many people find it difficult to draw the boundary between home and office, whether it's in their working hours or in the actual environment. So they have a lot of too many things that are in the home in the office. So I always recommend that people will take those items out first because they don't belong there. It's very distracting, and it leads to loss of productivity. I've seen it in my clients.
Well, I noticed behind you, Bridget, and also, behind you, you have the bookcase going, and I've seen in a lot of television interviews that have been taking place during the past several weeks, people tend to be in an environment where they have books behind them. Why is that important to have as a backdrop?
It makes you feel smart. First things first, we have to empower ourselves, right? The way that I've positioned, it has a lot to do with the way that our offices are set up. So I like to set my desk in the command position. So that means that I have the door like in my eye line, but it's not like right in front of me. So I'm not distracted. I've got a big, beautiful window right in front of me. It's framed by gorgeous curtains. There's a sofa in the office. And I actually have a TV in the office too, but I just use it only for playing music on YouTube. I swear, that's it. No TV watching during the day. Yeah. So it's all about how your office is set up. And many people just feel very comfortable and strengthened by having a classic bookshelf behind them. It's very anchoring.
Gilda, I thought we lost you to the competition.
I'm back. This really proves, I don't know if Jamie got to his tech tips yet, I'm actually hardwired into the internet. So this is the most secure way I can be connected, and the internet went down. So in that moment, you have to be calm. You have to have a plan B, which is wait a moment. Thankfully, it came right back up because I'm hardwired. I have an Ethernet cable in, so I'm not even relying on the Wi-Fi. So when this happens, as it does, and I didn't do it on purpose to illustrate the point, but we all know things go wrong with technology. You just got to roll with it. And I'm sure you went on with your introductions, got to other people. I tried to stay calm and come back in and join. So that's the name of the game. Be flexible, patient, and calm, because things will go wrong despite your best efforts.
And the funny thing is, when things go wrong, people don't seem to mind anymore. I'm reminded of an interview that was on BBC. I think it was last year. There was a British economist who was being interviewed, and his 2 little babies came into the room, and then his wife came after them. It doesn't matter anymore whether the kids come in or the cat comes in, or you just disappear into the ether for a few minutes.
I think we're more tolerant because we realize we're putting a lot of pressure on the bandwidth and the capacity and the space, and so I think people are a little bit more tolerant, which is good.
Mm-hmm. And that I want to ask James a question about that too. Are we set up for this kind of an environment where so many people are using bandwidth at this time from the homes? I mean, the average residence is not set up in a high-tech way, in the manner that an office park would be set up.
So Gilda, first of all, I'm impressed that you use the term Ethernet, and you know the difference between the Ethernet and the wireless. Not that it's that difficult of a concept, but I think a lot of people don't understand, you know, how an Ethernet connection could be more stable. So I am impressed. I think that most people are probably set up from an internet, maybe from a bandwidth standpoint, meaning, you know, if you have Optimum, if you have Fios, most people aren't really streaming that much information over the internet unless you're competing for, you know, some of that wireless connection with maybe your kids that are streaming videos from the television, with their smart TVs or their laptops. So from an internet speed standpoint, the upload and download standpoint, I think most people are probably pretty prepared. We're pretty spoiled around this area that you can get a reasonable speed for a reasonable price. So I think you're set up there. I think people are struggling though with maybe some of the wireless connections in their house, where, you know, it looks like we all have decent home offices, and whether you're wired or wireless, you probably have tested this before, and you know that you could connect and your speeds were okay. But if there's other people throughout the house that are now dependent upon that, maybe the wireless connection isn't strong enough or can support all of those devices. So I think some people are maybe faltering in that respect. You know, I guess certainly some of the other, from a tools standpoint too, I don't think a lot of people are prepared maybe to, if you're using voice over IP, I don't know if you know what that is, but voice over IP is, there's a couple different ways that you can execute that. You can do that through an application that maybe you have on your computer, so that doesn't require you plugging something else in. That just requires you having a, you know, maybe a USB or a Bluetooth headset that would allow you to use your computer to communicate with voice over IP. But if you have a device like this, let me see if I can get it up there. But it's there's just a regular telephone. This is a voice over IP telephone, but this would require an Ethernet connection. So I think some people, they're grabbing their phone from the office and thinking, hey, I'm voice over IP enabled, and they're looking for a place to plug it in the office, and then they're realizing, hey, I don't have I don't have an Ethernet connection, and they're struggling with that. One other thing I'd like to add too is cameras are a pretty hot commodity right now. We have some people that were looking for cameras, and if you don't have one on your laptop and you didn't have one on your desktop, people are paying, or certainly I don't know if they're paying, but certainly people are charging upwards of $200 for a video camera. Yeah, I know that you could buy, you know, a couple months ago, you could buy for 20 bucks, right? You could probably find somebody that was giving them away. So a lot of people are struggling to get the video connection down.
Mm-hmm. Many years ago, I used to run a public relations agency, and one of my clients was an ergonomics consultant. And this was back in the early 90s when the internet started to take off. If you're old enough to remember the AOL discs that were attached to magazines.
Yeah.
That's how
posters that we use now for our coffee cups, but yeah.
I once worked with a lady who made earrings out of them, which I thought was kind of
a great idea.
But my question is for Bridget, in terms of the ergonomics of the home office. A lot of people prior to this crisis basically had their computers just for playing games or goofing off on Facebook. But now that you're doing the 8-hour routine or even more, how do you set this up to be ergonomically correct? And because if people are either working from their kitchen tables, which were not intended to be workstations, or they just they don't want to sit on the couch balancing the laptop, because there are problems in that as well.
Your posture is the most important thing when you are sitting in the same position for several hours a day. So, and everybody has, like, some people have long legs, some people have long torsos, and some of us are just short on both ends. So you need to get an adjustable chair, and make sure that your chair rests so that your arms are at a 90-degree position for typing. And you need to make sure that your wrists are always lifted so you can avoid the stress on the wrists, and avoiding neck strain too. So if you can, even if you have a laptop, I suggest getting a small riser, maybe just like something that's in between 4 to 6 inches, depending on how tall you are, and placing your laptop on that, and then getting a separate keyboard for typing, because it creates such stress on the bottom, on the neck, and creating stress on the hips and the lower back when you are not properly positioned in front of your tools. Any tool men will tell you this.
Can I add something to that, Phil? I think you raise a great point. By the way, as you're going through your points, I'm checking my posture and making sure.
We're all sitting up straight, standing up straight.
90 degrees. 90 degrees.
Yeah.
But I think you make a great point with the external mouse and external keyboard. You say keyboard, but implied mouse. Boy, does that make a difference? If you're working on a laptop on, the small keyboard, oh, it's awful for your posture. But one other thing I'd like to add too is that it's so easy to add an external monitor to your laptop. And it's just, you can plug it in through an HDMI port or a VGA port, and you can either use that as your primary display. So monitors are cheap, right? So you can get a 27, 30-inch monitor. So much better than, struggling to look at those small screens. Or if you've never been accustomed to having 2 screens, it's wonderful. So you can use one on the laptop, and you can extend your display to the external monitor. So I just wanted to add that makes a huge difference in working from home.
Yeah, I have a screen here. This is it's really pretty. I could watch Lawrence of Arabia on this. It's got
a wide screen
too. Yeah,
it's probably a couple $100. They're not even that expensive anymore.
It is great. Well, Gilda, let me ask you a question, because obviously we're all at home doing our own things, but you consult with people who run companies. And if you're a boss who is a micromanager or worse, how are they going to be able to keep track of what everybody's doing at home?
I think that the death knell has sounded for the micromanagers. It should have sounded about 50 years ago, but really this virus has killed it. If you are a micromanager, this is not your time. Because I'm reading stories of bosses who are forcing their employees to keep the camera on all day, just so they know the employee is sitting there. And I think that qualifies under cruel and unusual punishment. So I really think micromanagement should have gone out when we switched from the industrial revolution to the kind of work we're doing now, because it's really about getting work done. So if you have the kind of work that you can measure, you've made a certain number of contacts, or you've completed the contract, or you've completed the code, or you have a project or a product, something to show at the end of your time. Does it really matter if you work between 9 and 5 or between noon, and then you took a break at 6 for dinner with the kids, and then you fired up the computer again at 10 p.m.? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Unless you're customer service and you're required to answer incoming calls, it really doesn't matter. So I think all of that is yesterday. And this virus situation has just accelerated what is an inevitable move towards knowledge workers who are supposed to be smart enough to know how to do their own work and not need somebody breathing down their back all the time. So I think micromanaging is gone. It should be gone. Right now, the employees are hanging on because we're all in fear for the economy. But the moment the economy picks up, those micromanagers will see an exodus of people from their companies, and rightly so.
Well, Bridget, you're in a sort of the opposite situation, because I assume with Intuitive Interiors, you have to be in somebody's office. How are you holding up with your business during this time?
It's all gone virtual. I'm working from my home office, and it's actually something that had been on my agenda to do. I just kept putting it off because I was always in the field. And so now I work with clients via Zoom, and it works best with people who know how to take initiative, who can hold themselves accountable. For those clients, I just make a plan and a check-in, like we have check-in calls, and I make sure to check their progress and make sure everything is going well. We troubleshoot, and it's just the same as if I were there, but I'm not. And then there are clients who need more hand-holding, and like I will actually be on Zoom with them while they are decluttering, so I can answer questions in real time and help them to find solutions. Because, you know, the reason why somebody will go through the investment of having a home organizer in their home, come to their home, is because they don't usually know how to do it themselves. And so they need somebody to help them create, like find where the pain points are, the deep pain points, the ones that are creating the poor habits and the poor patterns, and to find the solution for those. And that's what I do. I get in really deep and find the right lasting solution for my clients.
Mhm. One other aspect about working from home that I don't think a lot of people may have considered prior to this would have been the cybersecurity aspect. I mean, in the office, you have the IT specialist who has the firewall and the VPN and all of the tools. But if you're working from home, you probably just have the consumer product that you would download from McAfee or Norton or whatever. So James, I mean, granted, I'm smart enough to know not to open a PDF file from Mr. Unpronounceable from Nigeria asking me to transfer funds to my account. But what else should I be doing to ensure that I'm not going to be the victim of cyber hackers?
So I think one of the most important things that you can do is first contact your management, right? Find out what's an acceptable way to work from home. What's an acceptable way that you can remote into your workspace? Because I think what people do is they try and be productive, right? So you have somebody that log me in onto their computer, somebody that has go to my PC, somebody that's using VPN, and you know, you think that you're doing a good job because, hey, look at me, I'm working from home, I put this together and I'm productive. But what you don't realize is that maybe you're opening up some backdoors, maybe you have a username and a password that's weak, it's not really managed by the IT department. So simply if you're in management, you need to create a policy. You have to come up with the 1 or 2 or 10, whatever it is going to be acceptable ways that you're going to allow your team to work from home. And then you need to share that with your team. So having a policy is definitely the first thing. And then obviously you need to make sure that that's somewhat enforceable and just make sure that people have acknowledged that. Mm-hmm. Also, I think it's important if you can, as an employer, if you can provide a work machine or a laptop for the employee at home, because this is what happens. You have a lot of people have kids or other people that are using the home computer and they download toys and games and whatever it is on the computer, and it's actually malware. It's actually bad things, right? So this computer could be sitting at home. It could be scanning your home network for, you know, and it sees, and you know, the bad guys, you know, passively are monitoring and they say, oh, it's a home network, we don't really care. But now let's say, for example, your employer says, oh, okay, we're going to let you use that computer and we're going to install some VPN software onto your computer, which would allow this home computer now to have a direct connection to the corporate office. Mm-hmm. So once you establish that connection, this malware, this bad software can now see across that line and it can see everything that's in your corporate network. So the point I'm trying to make is that you need to be cognizant, if you are going to let people use their home computers, that you at least have to meet some basic software or some basic security restrictions. Make sure that it has corporate antivirus on it. Make sure it's a valid subscription. You've updated, you've scanned on a regular basis. Make sure that you have Windows hot fixes and service packs installed. So you have to set up a list of, you know, some basic security requirements before you allow them to use their home computers. And then I could go on and on with this stuff forever, but maybe another point that I can make is that, you know, I think people's guards were down and we were really in front of our clients and our colleagues when we first started moving from home. You have to be careful of the source of the message. And I know that we've all heard that before, but you see something about COVID, you see something about Zoom, join my meeting, you know, updates, you know, cures, whatever it is. And especially in the beginning, people's guards were down and they wanted information and they wanted it fast. So it looks like a legitimate site or maybe a legitimate app that you would load on your computer or your smart device to get real-time updates. Don't do that. Just don't do it. If you want, you know, information, make sure you verify the source that it's coming from. If it's a link to a story that you think is something that you're interested in, go to the primary source, go to CNN, go to Fox, go to NBC, and do a search that way. Don't click on the link. So just be careful. Think before you click.
Well, this presentation, it's just the four of us on the Zoom screen, but Gilda, how many people is too many people if you're going to be doing a Zoom conference?
That's a great question, because I think the answer, good consultant answer, it depends. So you really, like with in-person presentations and meetings, you have to think about what's the goal, who's the audience. So just because we can use video doesn't mean we have to use video. So if we're just having a meeting with the four of us, this is fine. We can jump in, we've got audio, we've got chat, 10 people maybe. When you get to 15, 20, and everybody's got their camera turned on, we have something called Zoom fatigue, where you see all those little squares on your screen. I move, I put my glasses up or fix my hair, and now your attention is drawn to that person. And so we don't really focus as well. A lot of distractions also. So I would encourage people to think about, do I really need to have everybody on video? Do I need to see everyone? Or are there certain times when I'm presenting, maybe you just see me, I share my screen so you see my slides, and then I don't need to have audio or video turned on for the participants at all. They can just monitor, they can send questions through chat or through Q&A or whatever your software allows, Zoom, WebEx, whatever you're using. So just like with in-person, think about not allowing the media to drive the message, but the other way around. What's the message? What's the goal? Who's the audience? How long is it? And then figure out the best technology. Because guess what? Sometimes a phone call works just fine. Sometimes a teleconference is fine. Have 5 people on the phone. You remember the thing, the old phone? That's just fine. Just because we can do Zoom doesn't mean we have to.
You might actually be hearing the old phone ringing in the other room here. I don't know if it's being picked up on the microphone. So I'm one of the few brontosauruses out there who still has a landline. So
I do as well. I have that as a backup to the cell phone.
Us
So in
too.
case, yeah, because that way the voice over IP is sometimes a little unsteady. So have the landline as a backup. But you know, thinking about all those things as James said and as Bridget said, suddenly people are working from home. So what is their space like? What is their tech and tech safety like? For entrepreneurs like me, I work from home when I'm not on the road. Usually I'm on the road a great deal traveling, but then I have my home office. So I'm accustomed to being at home using these tools. But a lot of people, it's a steep learning curve. Plus they're homeschooling their children, their kids are home from college. So I think there's a lot of stress and anxiety going on right now. And I'm glad that we're doing meetings and presentations like this where we can demystify some of this for people. It doesn't have to be that hard, and we don't have to be perfect. Now on the security side, we better be close to perfect, but the rest of it, we don't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Bridget, what has your experience been like during these past few weeks, doing stuff virtually, doing Zoom conferences?
I do all of my consultations on Zoom now. And it's been, and then I do, you know, I have my my networking groups. Everybody goes, we're always on Zoom, and it's been like Gilda said, it was like there's that Zoom fatigue, and I never thought about it until she just put it in that way. But yeah, like somebody's like this, and I'm like, hey, look at you.
I'm moving. Yeah, now you're distracted.
Yeah, now you just distracted me, Gilda.
Right. You lost your train of thought completely.
Yeah. And so I tend to if I'm like my work with people is really one-on-one. So it's fine for us to be like me and a couple, or me and even the family can be on the Zoom together. But when it gets to be that large amount of people, I personally put my video and myself on mute. It's all off, just out of respect for everybody else, really.
That's funny, because I had sort of an opposite situation the other day. I was asked to go onto Zoom for something, and I thought this was going to be a group meeting, and it turned out to be a one-on-one meeting. And I was sitting there with the person who invited me, and I'm saying to myself, why didn't you just call me? Why we didn't need to go through the whole rigmarole of going through Zoom. Just pick up and say, can you do that? Or even just send an email. So are people overusing Zoom in that sense? I'll throw that up to all three of you.
I think like any new toy, we're going to overuse it. And I know we've been using it for years. Okay, people in my industry have been using Zoom for years, but for most of the world, it's like a new toy. And so, yeah, we're going to use it. But unfortunately, you know, we have some security issues with Zoom, which James can speak to more than I can. And so you would never want to transmit confidential information. I had a client this week that was doing a quarterly earnings call. So it's publicly traded company information that's only available once the call happens, and then that can impact stock price. You would never want to do that over Zoom, or any practice sessions like that over Zoom, because that can be leaked out. And so just because we can use it, there's a lot of other tools that are easier, that are more secure. And like you said, the phone and email work fine. So I think the shine will rub off a little bit after a while, and people will just pick up the phone instead of assuming we have to do video. Because then it puts a pressure on you to be video ready at all times. That means hair and makeup, background, get the kids out of the room, the dog, the cat. And there's not a lot of, you know, that's not an easy setup for people instantly.
And you're stationary. You have to be in this spot. Like, I love to talk on the phone and do other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I also find that it's kind of interesting that people were kind of thrown into this. And I think where there was hesitation or resistance, or people just weren't comfortable using Zoom meetings, they had to. So I do think that it is going to become more the norm, and more people are going to. For example, today we did my company, we did a webinar, and we did it on using Teams, which is a Microsoft product, and it's about collaboration and video and that sort of thing. And it was great. And we've never done a webinar before. So, and it wasn't a video, but it was sharing the desktop and that sort of thing. But the point is that people are being thrust into this. They're having to try new things. And it's not just for a short period of time. We're talking about, we've been doing this for weeks, months. So we're all becoming comfortable with it. So when it's eventually back to work as normal, I think this is going to be part of our new culture.
Actually, let me stay with you for a second, James, because Gilda raised the concern about security with Zoom, and there's been a lot of news reports, particularly when this whole crisis started, that Zoom may not be the safest of platforms. Can you weigh in on that?
So in that regard, you just have to make sure that if you can, when you're setting up a meeting, you want to be able to permit people to join into the meeting, right? So you can, if you can do that, I don't know, is that Zoom is any less safe than the other ones that are out there. I was on a webinar with a large group of my colleagues, and actually it was kind of interesting. There's over 100 of us, and this is something that we do quarterly. We go to Philadelphia, and that was canceled. But they held the event, and there was a general session, and 110 people were in this general session. And then it worked out quite well. Then they were able to break us into smaller groups and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But during this webinar, during this Zoom webinar, there was actually a moderator, and it was a woman who basically, her job from 8 to 5, for 2 days in a row, was to sit in the virtual lobby of the Zoom meeting and allow people. So if you essentially knock, and she would have to see who I was before they could let me in. So that lended a degree of security there. So just be careful. And if you can do that, that certainly mitigates a lot of that risk.
Excellent. Well, I could go on talking for another hour or so, but unfortunately, we're going to be having to wind up this particular episode. So if people want to continue the conversation with all three of you, where can they find you? Let's start with you, Gilda.
So then go to my website, www.gildabonanno.com, and that's spelled GILDABONANNO.
Excellent. And Bridget, where can folks find you?
Like Gilda, my website, it's my name, bridgetflynn.com, and that is BridgetFlynn.com.
And James, where can folks find you?
If they go to TarryTech.com, that's TarryTech.com, or you can send an email to info@TarryTech.com, and we'll be sure to get right back to you.
And if you folks want to find me, I'm at westfaironline.com, and I hope you're going to be looking out this weekend. The next edition of the Westchester and Fairfield County Business Journals is going to be coming out on the weekend in a digital flipbook edition. We're not doing paper for the time being, and we're doing it as a digital version. Getting a lot of good response for it too, so that's another one. Yeah,
they're great. That digital format is fantastic. I really liked it. I was impressed.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, James Kudla, Bridget Flynn, and Gilda Bonanno, thank you for being such great guests on today's episode. And folks, we hope to see you again here next week on YouTube. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.